I've been popping off, so pass the perk, please. Shorty, I might dodge a bullet if you try to hit me. And I'll be there before I love you, shorty, under 6 feet. I don't wanna fall in love, it's risky. Lately, I've been popping off, so pass the perk, please.
What you're about to hear is more than just a tragic story. It's a chilling reminder of how quickly a life full of promise can be stolen. A rising star, a senseless act of violence, and a question that still lingers. Was this just a robbery gone wrong, or something far more sinister? Some dreams seem unstoppable, a star on the rise, a woman with everything to live for, fame, success, and a future that burned brighter than ever. But sometimes the higher someone climbs, the more dangerous the fall. And in one brutal moment, everything she worked for was stolen in an act of unspeakable violence. It was May 20, 2021. The world kept moving. People went to work, came home, laughed, loved, unaware that in one corner of Columbus, Ohio, a life was slipping away. What began as an ordinary evening turned into a nightmare. A promising young artist sat in a car, unaware she was being watched, hunted. Moments later, gunfire tore through the air. And just like that, Boog the Bandit, Courtney Nicole Bruce, was gone. A rising star? Silenced. A robbery turned deadly. But was this just a crime of opportunity, or was she targeted? As police unraveled the case, they uncovered something far more chilling than anyone could have imagined. This is the horrifying case of Kyson Murphy, Jumada Williams, and Sincere McIntyre. And the tragic fate of Boog the Bandit, the making of a star. Before she was known as Boog the Bandit, she was Courtney Nicole Bruce, a girl with big dreams and the kind of determination that set her apart. Growing up on the east side of Columbus, Ohio, Courtney wasn't just another face in the crowd. She carried herself with confidence, an energy that made people stop and take notice. She had an innate ability to draw others in, whether it was through her music, her modeling, or simply the way she carried herself. But behind that strength was a young woman who had fought hard to carve out her place in the world. From an early age, Courtney was mesmerized by the arts. She had an eye for fashion, a natural gift in front of the camera, and a voice that carried raw emotion. She first made waves as a model, working with major brands like Chris Brown's Black Pyramid Clothing and Rob Kardashian's Arthur George Socks. It was clear she was going places. She wasn't just posing for the camera, she was making a name for herself. But despite the glamour of modeling, it wasn't what truly set her soul on fire. Music was her escape. It had been for as long as she could remember. In high school, she found herself drawn to the recording studio, captivated by the way beats and lyrics could tell a story. Her story. It was in that space, surrounded by microphones and dim lights, that she felt most at home. For Courtney, music was more than just a creative outlet. It was therapy. She used it to channel emotions she didn't always know how to express: heartbreak, struggle, resilience. Her songs weren't just catchy hooks and well-crafted verses, they carried weight. In tracks like Heart Away, Hot Topic, and Risky, she poured herself into every lyric. She sang about love, about loss, about the harsh realities of life, and people listened. Her fan base grew not just because she had talent, but because she had something real, something that couldn't be manufactured. She was authentic, and in an industry full of illusions, that made her stand out. But Courtney's journey wasn't without hardship. She had seen the rougher side of life, made choices she would later have to answer for. In her early 20s, she was convicted of conspiracy to commit bank fraud, a mistake that cost her 2 years behind bars, 2 years of lost time, 2 years of wondering if she'd ever get another shot at her dreams. But she never let it define her. When she walked out of those prison doors in 2019, she wasn't the same person who had gone in. She was wiser, sharper, more determined than ever. She wasn't going to let a chapter of her past dictate the rest of her story. In April 2020, she dropped her first song, Lonely, marking a turning point in her career. The song resonated with people not just because of its melody, but because it came from a place of truth. Courtney was back, and she wasn't holding anything back. From that moment, everything seemed to be falling into place. Her music gained traction, her fan base grew, and for the first time in a long time, she could see a future where her dreams were no longer just dreams. They were within reach. She was working on new music, building her brand, and making connections that would push her even further into the industry. She had made mistakes, but she had also rebuilt herself. And the world was finally starting to take notice. But dreams can be fragile. One moment everything is coming together, the next it's slipping through your fingers. What happened next would shock everyone who knew her. A young woman full of life and ambition was about to come face to face with something she never saw coming. And in the blink of an eye, everything she had fought for, everything she had dreamed of, would be stolen. She had spent her whole life chasing the future, but on May 20, 2021, her future would be taken from her. It was a Thursday evening in Columbus, Ohio, warm, quiet, unassuming, the kind of evening that felt like any other, where the hum of the city blended into the background and life moved on without warning of what was to come. Courtney, known to the world as Boog the Bandit, was in a car parked on Dort Place near East Livingston Avenue. Beside her was a 25-year-old man, someone she trusted, someone she had no reason to fear. The two sat together, unaware that danger was creeping closer with each passing second. Somewhere in the shadows, three young men watched them. They weren't just passers-by, they had come for a reason. Their eyes were locked onto Courtney and her companion, their minds set on what they were about to do. Maybe they had been following her, maybe they had been waiting for the perfect moment, or maybe, in their twisted logic, they believed this would be easy, just another robbery, another quick score, another night where they could take without consequence. Then they moved. Like predators closing in on their prey, the three men advanced toward the car, their presence sudden and suffocating. Before Courtney and her friend could react, they were surrounded. The cold gleam of handguns caught the dim evening light. There was no time for questions, no time for understanding. This wasn't an idle threat. This was a robbery. Panic set in. The air grew thick with fear. Courtney and her companion were outnumbered, trapped. Voices clashed in a flurry of demands, money, valuables, anything that could be taken, but things spiraled too fast, spinning into a chaos neither side could control. A struggle erupted, the kind that lasts mere seconds but feels like an eternity. Then gunfire. The deafening crack of bullets shattered the night. In an instant, everything changed. Courtney was hit. The pain was immediate, searing, a brutal reality that replaced whatever fear had existed just moments before. The three attackers fled into the darkness, their mission complete, leaving behind the devastation they had caused. Her friend wasted no time. With adrenaline pumping and desperation taking over, he hit the gas, speeding toward Mount Carmel East Hospital. Every red light, every second that passed felt like a countdown to something irreversible. Courtney needed help. Fast. The weight of what had just happened sat heavy in the car, but there was no time to process it. No time to think about the gunshots still ringing in his ears. There was only the road ahead and the hope that somehow, some way, she would survive this. The hospital came into view, a beacon in the night. He pulled up, yelling for help, for someone to save her. The doors swung open, medical staff rushing to take her inside. A flurry of movement, the chaos of emergency care, a battle fought in sterile white hallways where every second mattered. But even the most skilled hands couldn't undo what had been done. Despite every effort, despite every desperate attempt to save her, Courtney Nicole Bruce was pronounced dead shortly after 6 p.m. She was 26 years old. The news spread fast, a ripple of shock and sorrow that coursed through Columbus and beyond. Social media lit up with disbelief. Friends, family, fans, everyone struggled to process the brutal reality that she was gone. A young woman full of talent and promise, taken in an act of senseless violence.
If you're enjoying this story, hit subscribe button and be part of the conversation where we dig deep into the most shocking and mysterious cases together.
The questions came quickly, pressing, urgent. Who were the men responsible? Why had they targeted her? Was this a random attack? Or was there something more beneath the surface? The police launched an investigation, combing through every lead, every clue that could bring them closer to the truth. But in those first hours, all anyone knew for certain was that a rising star had been extinguished far too soon. And for those who loved her, grief settled in like a storm that refused to pass. The music she had worked so hard to create still played, her voice forever captured in songs that now carried an unbearable weight. The future she had fought for was gone. But the questions, the uncertainty, and the search for justice were only just beginning. The days that followed Courtney's murder were a blur of sorrow and disbelief. The weight of her absence was crushing, felt in the empty spaces she once filled. The recording studio where her voice had once carried, the streets where she had walked with purpose, the lives she had touched with her music. Grief settled over Columbus like a heavy fog. But beneath the sorrow there was something else brewing. A demand for justice, a need for answers. Someone had to pay for what had been done. The Columbus Division of Police wasted no time. This wasn't just another case, it was a high-profile homicide that had rattled the community. Courtney wasn't just a victim. She was someone people knew. someone people cared about. Detectives combed through surveillance footage, analyzed phone records, and pieced together witness statements, determined to find out who had been responsible for the attack that ended her life. And soon a pattern began to emerge. The investigation led them to three names: Kyson Murphy, 22, Jumata Williams, 19, and Sincere McIntyre, just 17 years old. These weren't strangers to the streets of Columbus. They were young men with troubled pasts, each already familiar with the weight of the system they now found themselves trapped in. But this time it wasn't petty crime or reckless mistakes. This was murder. Murphy was the first to fall. On August 9, just shy of 3 months after Courtney's death, he was in custody. He didn't fight it. Maybe he knew there was no escaping what was coming. Maybe the guilt had already set in. Whatever the reason, he pleaded guilty to involuntary manslaughter and robbery. The courtroom was silent as the judge read his fate: 12 to 16.5 years behind bars. For some, it felt like a step toward closure. For others, it felt like a slap on the wrist. Williams was next. His arrest came just 2 days later, on August 11. Unlike Murphy, he didn't have the option to plead down to a lesser charge. The evidence against him was too strong. Witnesses had come forward, placing him at the scene. Some claimed he was the one who had pointed the gun at Courtney and her companion during the ambush. His charges were heavier: murder and aggravated robbery. If convicted, he wouldn't be seeing freedom anytime soon. But the third suspect, McIntyre, was different. He wasn't caught right away. While his accomplices were behind bars, he was on the run. At just 17, he became one of the most wanted fugitives in Ohio, slipping through the cracks as law enforcement closed in. Months passed with no sign of him. Every lead seemed to fizzle out. Had he fled the state? Was he hiding in plain sight? The uncertainty gnawed at investigators, at Courtney's family, at a community desperate for justice. Then, on November 5th, his luck ran out. The Ohio State Highway Patrol and Belleville police finally caught up with him, but it wasn't a quiet arrest. When they tried to stop the car he was in, McIntyre chose to run. A high-speed chase ensued, tearing through the roads as officers pursued him with everything they had. The tension was palpable. Would he crash? Would he get away? Would this end in gunfire? When the car finally came to a stop, officers moved in quickly. They searched the vehicle, hoping to find something, anything that would connect him to Courtney's murder. And they did. Inside, they found drugs and a loaded gun. He wasn't just a fugitive. He was armed, dangerous, and still living the life that had put him on the path toward destruction. McIntyre was charged with murder and 2 counts of aggravated robbery. His arrest marked the final piece of the puzzle, the last name on the list of those responsible for taking Courtney's life. But was it enough? Could any number of arrests, any length of prison sentences, truly make up for what had been lost? For Courtney's family, the answer was clear. No amount of justice could bring her back. No conviction could erase the pain of her absence. The music she had poured her soul into still played, but now it was a haunting reminder of everything she would never get to do, everything she had been robbed of. The future she had dreamed of had been stolen, not just from her, but from everyone who had believed in her. And yet the case was far from over. The trials, the testimonies, the fight for the maximum sentences, there was still more to come. The courtroom battles would soon begin, and with them, a deeper look into the minds of the men who had killed her. Who were they? What had driven them to commit such a senseless act? And when the time came, would justice truly be served? Wanda Bruce sat in the quiet of her home, staring at the walls, at the pictures that now felt like relics of a life that had been ripped away. There were moments when she thought she could still hear Courtney's voice, laughing, singing, dreaming out loud about the future. But the silence always came crashing back, reminding her that her daughter wasn't coming home. The weight of her grief was unbearable. It wasn't just the loss of a child, it was the loss of everything Courtney had been working toward. She had fought so hard to carve a name for herself in an industry that gave nothing away for free. She had built something real, something that people believed in, and in an instant, it had been taken from her. Wanda refused to let Courtney be reduced to just another statistic, another name lost in the endless cycle of violence. She wouldn't let her be forgotten, but how did a mother even begin to fight for justice when the world kept moving forward as if nothing had changed? Columbus felt different now. The streets Courtney had walked, the places she had performed, they all carried an emptiness that people couldn't ignore. Her music still played on the radio, but now every lyric felt heavier. Fans, friends, and strangers who had been touched by her journey came together, mourning in a way that didn't feel real. The outpouring of love was overwhelming. People painted murals in her honor, held candlelight vigils, and shared her music as if keeping it alive could somehow keep her spirit here just a little longer. But for Wanda, the grief never faded. The world could keep spinning, people could keep playing her songs, but at the end of the day, Wanda was the one left with the unbearable truth. Her daughter was gone. She wanted answers. She wanted to understand how something like this could have happened to someone who had already fought so hard just to make it out. Courtney had always been tough, always been the kind of person who didn't let anything stand in her way. She had made mistakes, sure. She had spent time behind bars, had seen the darker sides of life. But she had pulled herself back up. She had been on the verge of something great. And now? Now she was another headline, another tragedy, another reminder that success didn't make you invincible. Wanda wasn't alone in her grief. The entire city seemed to be mourning with her. Boog the Bandit wasn't just a rapper. She had become a symbol of perseverance, of second chances, of what could have been. Fans flooded social media with tributes, sharing stories of how her music had helped them through hard times, how her lyrics had given them hope. Artists who had worked with her spoke about her talent, her drive, the way she had been destined for more. But for Wanda, none of it made the pain any easier. She wanted justice. She wanted to know that the men who had stolen her daughter's future would pay for what they had done. She sat in courtrooms, staring at the faces of the young men who had killed Courtney, trying to understand what had driven them to that moment. Had they even hesitated before pulling the trigger? Had they known who she was? Or had she just been another target, another opportunity for them to take something that wasn't theirs? As the legal process dragged on, Wanda found herself caught between grief and anger. The sentences handed down wouldn't bring Courtney back. No amount of time behind bars could erase what had happened. But she refused to let her daughter's name fade away. She spoke out about gun violence, about the dangers that lurked in the very city Courtney had loved. She fought to keep her daughter's legacy alive, not just as Boog the Bandit, but as Courtney, the daughter, the dreamer, the fighter. And as the world moved on, playing her songs, sharing her story, Wanda made a promise to herself. She wouldn't let Courtney be forgotten. She wouldn't let the pain of this tragedy become just another cautionary tale. Her daughter had been destined for something great, and even in death, Wanda would make sure that greatness lived on. Courtney Bruce had fought for a future filled with music, success, and the chance to uplift those around her. But in one cruel moment, all of that was stolen. Her story is a heartbreaking reminder of how quickly dreams can be cut short by senseless violence. Though justice was served, it will never bring her back. What do you think? Should those who take a life so carelessly ever get a second chance? Let us know in the comments, and if you believe her story deserves to be remembered, subscribe to the channel. Only those who think her life didn't matter will scroll past.